Hare Krishna, good morning dear devotees from Sridham Mayapur. My name is Madhavananda Das, last time I checked. And this is part of our regular adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we're going to be speaking about, as part 9 of our discussion we called Meeting in Kurukshetra, although we're not getting to Kurukshetra very fast. We're in Mathura today. It's the third session about Mathura, and we're going to hear what happened when Krishna went to fight with Chanura and Mushtaka and Toshala and the other wrestlers, and how different acharyas and shastras describe how Krishna, after wrestling with those terrible warriors, then he wrestled with his boys. Narayanam namaskrityam naramschaiva narotamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bhadate Tata Adhavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvata Giyate Mukam Kodoti Vachalam Pangam Lang Gayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Hari Kori Be Chakadola Se chaka dolanka padaye, some lozenges. Mo nirantare rahu, manamo nirantare rahu. Ha Krishna boli jiva jao. Ha Krishna boli jao jiva. Moteu dada radha dava. Moteu dada radha dava. Moteu dada radha dava. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Gauragraganya gana gocha goloruharam Gauranga gudatama gopyara kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati simha gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Vanchakopadarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So welcome on dear devotees. It's nice to have Madhupati Prabhu here, one of the national treasures of Hungary. Levine Prabhu and Natalia, she's one of the national treasures in Estonia. And Mahendra Prabhu also. So again this morning we're going to be speaking something about, it's from the Hari Vamsa Purana, from Garga Samhita, from Jiva Goswami's Gopal Campu, from Laghu Vaishnava Toshni of Jiva Goswami, from Brihad Vaishnava Toshni of Sanatana Goswami, and from Sarita Darshini by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We'll be speaking about Kamsa Vada, or the killing of Kamsa. It's an introduction to that. I don't know if we'll go that far. But we'll be speaking today about the killing of the wrestlers. So I want to begin by reading from the 10th canto, chapter 43, text number 18. Hatam kuvalaya pidam drisvatab apidurjayo kamso manasyapi tada brisham udvi vijay nripa. So in this verse, it's interesting, the word hatta means to kill. The word hati means elephant. It's a little similar. It says hatam kuvalaya pidam. That the verse is speaking about Kamsa and how manasiyapi is an interesting word in this verse, which is explained in different ways by different acharyas. It was translated that he was overwhelmed with anxiety, Kamsa, when he saw hatam kuvaliyapida, that the elephant was dead. And it said here that Drisva, Kamsa, saw that. So the first question is addressed by Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshni. How is it that Kamsa personally saw that? The verse says, hatam kuvalipidam Drisva. That Kamsa saw this Drisva. Jiva Goswami explains, although the elephant was killed outside of the arena, Kamsa he has a very high seat, so he could see over the wall, apparently. And so he saw that the elephant had been killed, and Drisva to means the two of them, Krishna and Balaram. He understood that these two boys are Durjaya. Jaya means victory, and Durjaya means invincible or very, very victorious. And so he became a little nervous about that. In a colloquial American English, we might say that he wet his pants. Kamsa manasyapi tada. So manasyapi can mean different things. One is that Kamsa is a great hero. He's the king, and people respect him like that. But a second meaning is that Kamsa was completely freaked out with anxiety, very, very disturbed. Jiva Goswami explains that Shukadeva Goswami is speaking this verse with great joy because he sees that Kamsa now has become very disturbed in his mind. And that brings pleasure to Shukadeva Goswami. So, a few verses later in the same chapter, we hear about how the residents of Mathura began to glorify Krishna. And they said, Eto Bhagavata Sakshat Dharir Narayanasyahi. First thing they said, these two boys are Sakshat Hare Narayanasya. They're directly expansions of Lord Narayan. And they say, Esha Vaikila Devakyam Jato Nitas Chagokulam Kalam Etam Vasan Gudo Babride Nanda Veshmani. This is their particular understanding. It's interesting to hear this. They say that Krishna, he took birth, Devakyam, from the womb of Devaki. Devakyam, Jato. Jata means to take birth. And then Nitas Chagokulam, he was taken, brought. Nitai means to give. My grandma used to say, Nitai means take this. That's Nitai's mood. So here, and this is a similar word in this verse, Nita means that he was brought, he was given. They're saying, to Gokul, where he stayed this whole time. Guda Vavride, Guda means hidden. Guda Vavride, he grew up in that hidden place, Nanda Vesmani, in the house of Nanda Maharaj. So this is their particular understanding. The residents of Mathura, they're thinking Krishna and Balaram are expansions of Lord Narayan. And they're actually, Krishna took birth from the womb of Devaki and was brought to Gokul, where he stayed this whole time. He's not really from Gokul. This is their idea. But the next verse describes that, 25th verse, that they do know something about Krishna's Braj Leela. Putananena nittantam chakravatas chadanava. Arjuno guyaka keshi danyako nye cha tadvidaha. The verse speaks about Putana, and Chakravata. Chakravata means the whirlwind demon. And how they say that anena nitam, that Krishna brought about nitam, antam, the anta, he gave the nita, same kind of word we used a minute ago. Nitantam, he brought about the end of Putana, he killed Putana, he killed the whirlwind demon, wind demon, and he freed the two Arjun trees. And he also killed Guyaka. Guyaka means that demon Shankachuta, as well as Keshi and Dhenukasura, and many other similar demons. And the verse, text 26 and 27, describes how Krishna and Balaram, they saved the cows and the cowherd people. Gava sapala etena davagne parimochita. Parimochita means to deliver. Davagne, from the fire. And Krishna, Kaliya Dhamita, he subdued Kaliya, this terrible snake. He smashed the pride of Indra by holding up Govardhan Hill for a week and protected all the residents of Vrindavan. And then, interestingly, in text 28, the residents of Mathura, they speak about the gopis. Gopyo swanitchamudi taha sita prekshanam mukham pashyantyo vividhams tapams taranti sma sramam muda. That those gopis, they're mudha, they're very, very happy, very, very blissful, because they're always getting to see the mudita hasita, the smiling face of Krishna. And by seeing that smiling face, they have no fatigue, they have no anxieties or problems. So Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnava Toshin explains that, how do they know about the gopis? They said that, he says there that these ladies in Mathura, and some of the ladies in Mathura did know about the gopis. The wives of the Brahmins were just on the edge of Braj, and they knew about the pastimes of Krishna. They knew something about the gopis, because the Palindri ladies, these tribal ladies, they're getting flowers and fruits from them regularly. And so similarly, some of the ladies in Mathura were also getting different things from the forest, from these Palindri ladies, and they knew something about the gopis. And so they're glorifying the gopis, that the gopis are always very, very happy because they can see Krishna. And Sanatana Goswami says even the verse indicates the Ras Leela. How does it indicate the Ras Leela? Because the verse describes Taranti Smashramam Muda, that the gopis became free from their tiredness, from their fatigue, which indicates the Ras Leela. When the gopis danced with Krishna during one Brahma Ratri, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Maharyad Brahmano Vidu, the 8th chapter of the Gita, Krishna says that 1,000 yugas put together is one night of Lord Brahma. It's quite a long time. And the gopis danced with Krishna for one Brahma Ratri. And then they became a little tired, and then Krishna took them into the water of the Jamuna, and they were relieved from their fatigue. So when Chanura was there, and Chanura was listening, everybody's glorifying Krishna, Chanura became very, very disturbed. And this is interesting. This is the nature of a demoniac person. Even we see sometimes amongst the devotees, some of us, sometimes we have some demoniac nature. If we see someone begin to practice Krishna consciousness, we're generally very happy about that. If they're chanting the holy names and they're reading the Bhagavatam. But then how is it that sometime later we see the devotees are glorifying that person? Oh yes, and Anapayani Radha, she's become a fantastic mridanga player and she sings so nice and this and this. Then we become envious of that. Oh, that person, we knew her. How can you say that? So in a similar way, Chanura became very, very envious. He couldn't tolerate that someone was offering praise to Krishna. That's the nature of someone who's in the mode of ignorance. And the 31st verse in this chapter describes Janesh evam bravaneshu tir yesu nin adatsu cha Krishna Rama samabhasya chanuro vakyam abravit. So when he heard all these people talking and people were playing musical instruments to glorify Krishna and Balaram, at that time Chanura, he addressed Krishna and Balaram. He couldn't tolerate what he was saying. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Tosini says that the word akyam can also mean avakyam. Chanura avakyam abravit, which means that Chanura spoke in a very unsuitable way. It's a very important part of culture. We should learn how to speak in a suitable way, in an appropriate way. Learn how to speak words that are sweet to please people. And if you have the position of guru, if you have the position of a policeman or a high court judge like Thakur Bhakti Vinod, if you're instructed like Krishna instructed Arjuna, then you can go and kill demons and you can chastise others. But if the Vaishnavas don't have that instruction from Sri Guru or from the Lord, they become little shed. They don't. Why do they want to go and do that? In the language of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, as he said in one letter to a disciple, said, why do you want to take up the unpleasant task of chastising your godbrothers? That's my work. It's a very unpleasant thing. Why do you want to do that? You know? But demoniac persons like Chanura and Mushtika, they can't tolerate. So Chanura, he addressed Krishna and Balaram. Hey Nanda Suno, hey Rama Bhavanto, Vira Samato, Niyuda Kushalo Shrudva, Ragyahuto, Didrikshuna. Hey Nanda, he addresses them as Hey Nanda Suno. Now it's interesting, the residents of Mathura, they're addressing Krishna as Vasudev Nandan, as Devaki Nandan. But here, Chanura, who's a big demon, they were devotees, but Chanura is addressing him as, Hey Nanda Suno, hey son of Nanda Maharaj, and he addresses Baladev as Rama. Rama means that person who gives some happiness. You too, Bhavanto Vira Samato. Samato means to be respective, and Vira means a hero. You too are very powerful heroes. And we know Niyuda Kishalo, you're very expert Kushala in wrestling. We've heard about this thing. And the king has called you here, he wants to see you. Well, that sounds very nice, doesn't it? But just as the gopis, they speak parokshavad, they say two different things at once. So Chanura also here in the verse, he means something else. Sounds like he's speaking in a sweet way. And just like a ignorant person, sometimes he may say something which appears to be sweet, but indirectly they make fun of you, or they're putting you down. And this is what Chanura's intention is. He's addressing Krishna as son of Nanda, and Balaram as Ram. So by addressing Krishna as the son of Nanda Maharaj, he's indicating that Nanda Maharaj is his true father, and he addresses Balaram as Ram, meaning that he gives pleasure to all the people, but to encourage him to fight. But his real intention is to show that Krishna took birth from a Gwala family, from a Vaishya family. And Chanura himself, we call him a wrestler. In Western culture today, to be a wrestler is almost a very high-class thing. And there's so many wrestlers. Anapani has a brother who's a wrestler. And it's considered to be a good thing. But actually a wrestler here is a subcategory of a Kshatriya, and they're warriors. Chanura and Mushtika were they were more powerful than the demigods. So by addressing Krishna as Hey Nanda Suno, really what he wanted to do was make fun of Krishna. This is what Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshini says. He wanted to make fun of Krishna to indicate, you're just from a cowherd family. And he didn't even mention Balaram's lineage, which is the traditional thing. When we receive a Vaishnava, when a Vaishnava comes, a senior exalted Vaishnava to a Sangha, we should speak sweet words. And we say, oh, this is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, or if we're very fortunate, I don't know if there's any left now, but I've had the good fortune of having Sangha with a number of them. This is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, or this is a disciple of Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, or Radhanath Maharaj, or some exalted Vaishnava, and we speak about their lineage in this way. And so in the same way, this is the tradition, this is how Chanura should begin to speak. But he's speaking in a kind of double talk way. His intention is to make fun of Krishna, saying that he's the son of Nanda Maharaj, and he doesn't even mention Balaram's lineage, and who knows who you're born from. And in this way, he's making fun of them. And he's saying indirectly, Jiva Goswami says, you're both respected by all kinds of people as being very powerful and brave, and the king has heard you're very expert at wrestling and fighting, so he wants to see you fight. And so, because the king wants to see you, must be qualified, and therefore you should participate. So Chanura is trying to mock and make fun of Krishna. But our acharyas have said also that Saraswati Devi is dancing on the tongue of Chanura, and in actuality he's glorifying Krishna and Balaram. He's glorifying Krishna, hey Nanda Sunu, you're the son of Nanda Maharaj. Although the residents of Mathura are glorifying him as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, hey Nanda Sunu. And to not speak about the lineage or the family of Ram is also appropriate, because Lord Balaram is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this way, Saraswati Devi is actually dancing on the tongue of Chanura and making him glorify Krishna and Balaram. And so then Chanura goes on to say, Nityam pramudita gopa vatsapala yata sputam vaneshu malayudena kridantas chariyanti gaha. He said, everybody knows, we've all heard about you, that you boys, you're always taking care of the calves, and we've heard that you're always wrestling with each other. Malayudena, you're always fighting with each other while you're taking care of the cows. Tasmad means therefore. Tasmad ragya priyam yu yam. Therefore, you should behave in a way that will bring priya or pleasure to the king. Vayam cha karavam. Hey, let's do this. He says, and if we do this, then bhutani na prasidanti. Everyone's going to be very happy. All bhutani, all living entities are going to be happy, because sarva bhuta moyo nripa. The king will be pleased. And if the king is pleased, then everyone is pleased. This is Vedic philosophy. Of course, that means that the king is actually a qualified king. Jiva Goswami in Laghu Vaishnava Toshan, he says that Krishna protests. He says, but we're just boys. We wrestle with other cowherd boys. And Chanura says, yeah, I know, but you should please the king. The king's asking for this. You don't fear. By pleasing him, all living entities will be pleased. Prajabhoja patir asya vayam chapi vane charaha karavam priyam nityam tanna param anugraha. He says, Krishna told Chanura, he says, but who are we? You're talking about Praja Bhoja Pate, the subjects of the king of the Bhoja dynasty. He said, but who are we? We're Vane Chara. We just wander around in the forest. We're not high-class city boys. We're just from the forest. So we have to satisfy his desire. And by doing that, then we'll get Paramanugraha. We'll get the greatest benefit. So by saying this, Jiva Goswami says that he's accepting Chanura's proposal, but he's speaking also in a very subtle kind of way. He addresses Kamsa as the king of the Bhojas, and by doing that, he's giving respect. But he's also indicating that the king was not Ugrasena, who should be the real king. And he's indicating we're the subjects of the king, but in reality, we're forest people. In other words, you're city dwellers, and therefore we have to obey the order of the king, and therefore we'll do it. But actually, Krishna's being disrespectful. He's saying, we're not really your subjects, because we eternally wander around. We're Vanay Chara. We just wander around in Vrindavan. And this Kamsa, he's indicating in an indirect way, he's just a recent person. He's not really the king. And therefore, actually, our desire is we want to please Nanda Maharaj, the king of the cow. We're not interested in pleasing this Kamsa. In the 38th verse, Krishna tells Chanura and Mushtika, Balavayam, he says, we're just young boys. Tulya balai kridisyamo yatochitam. We play with boys who are tulya, who are equal to us in strength. That's appropriate. Bhavinda yudam madharma sprisin mala sabha sada. He says that this wrestling a match, it should go on in a proper way so that adharma spriset, adharma, irreligion, doesn't touch it. And he's saying this, he's speaking about the Malasabha. So that the Malasabha Sada, the members, they're not disturbed. This is beautiful illustration of culture. We have our own personal individuality. But when we enter into an assembly of senior persons, it's a different thing. We have a different type of behavior there. And we should think about that assembly. Indirectly here, Krishna is telling Chanura that you're really a rascal. And this assembly, certainly they're not going to be very happy with you if adharma spriset, if adharma enters into this assembly. Therefore, in the same way, if Vaishnava aparad enters into the assembly, if someone starts criticizing the Lord or criticizing the Vaishnavas, then that assembly becomes very unhappy. And the wise members of that assembly, they'll get up and they'll leave. Jiva Goswami comments on this. He says that Krishna's telling him, Balavayam, we're just young boys, we're not very strong. And the word Balaha means it's a plural word. Rather than, it could be just used for in a dual way, another type of verb could be used. But he's using this plural to indicate that they have a group of boys. We have our sabha of cowherd boys. And we play with these boys who are not greater or less in strength than us. And Jiva Goswami says there's another meaning that Krishna's meaning here. He's saying that you're a fool. We don't play with you. We play with our cowherd boyfriends. Because they're equal with us. They're not less in strength. And you're so insignificant. Why would we want to fight with you? And he said that we'll do this because you're insisting. But it's not going to be our fault if you die. Don't blame us for this, okay? So at that time, the Hari Vamsa Purana in the Vishnu Parva chapter 30, describing this pastime, it said at that time the senior members of the Yadava dynasty, then they spoke up. And they said, okay, there's going to be some rules for this fight. Bahu yudamidam range sparshani kamakataram kriya bula samagyatam asastram nimitam pura. So in this yudha, in this fighting that's going to go on, there should be rules that are set by the judges, and there should not be any cowardice. And in this match, it's going to be asastram nimitam pura. There's not going to be any weapons used. Now this indicates that Chanura and Mushtika, they're not just like, I don't know what you call them, WWA, World Wrestling fellows. They're not just wrestlers like that, like some cute guys on the television who make some show. But they're actually terrible warriors. And they generally use weapons. So the Hari Vamsa Purana is describing the words of the Yadava dynasty, saying that now in this fight, there won't be any weapons. And by doing that, we'll see the strength and the expertise of the warriors. And then they elder members of the Yadava dynasty, they say, Balo vayadiva briddo madyo vapi kriso piva balasto vastito range gaya kakshan tarena vai. He said, okay, this is more rules here. If the wrestler is a boy, or if he's elderly, sometimes old men also wrestle, middle-aged, if he's very skinny and weak, or if he's a strong person, the fight should be between equals. And at that time, then Krishna, he spoke up a few verses later, and he says, Aham balo, I'm just a child. Mahan andro. And this andra means wrestler. He's Mahan andro. He's a great, huge guy. He's like a big mountain. Parvotama. He said, I'll agree to fight. But this is not right. This fellow, we've heard about him. Kareshi prasutoyam. He was born at the place known as Kurush. And Chanuro namata. His name is Chanura. Bahu Yodi Sarirena. And he has this very, very powerful body. Karma Bishcharu Chintyatam. And he considers, Chintya means to think, he considers that Karma Bishcharu, his work is fighting. Etena Bahavo Mala Nipatanantaram Hata. He's defeated many, many wrestlers, and he's killed many of them. But Ranga Pratapakamena. Pratapakam means he's adopted, the Ranga means in the wrestling arena, but he's used wrong methods. He's cheated. And because of that, Malamagarsha Dushita, he's given a bad name to wrestling. At that time, Chanura spoke up, and he said, don't try to tell us this. He says, Na balo na kishoras twam. We know you. You're na balo. You're not really a boy. Na kishora. You're not really a youth. Balasha balina. Balinam vaya. That actually, you and Balaram, you're very, very powerful. Lilayebyo hatojena. You killed that terrible elephant who was Sahasra Dvipa Sattva Brit, who had the strength of 1,000 other elephants, and you did it, Lilayebyo, like it was a game. Tasma, therefore, Bhavabhyam Balabir, Yodavyam Nanayod Travai. Therefore, you should fight with powerful wrestlers. There's nothing unfair about that. You should come and fight with us. And Jiva Goswami explains that in the verse, Shukadev Goswami, Krishna is saying, Chanura is saying, speaking that you should fight in a plural way because all the wrestlers are eager to fight with you. And Krishna says, well, how can I fight with you? And we're cowherd boys. We're not suitable to play in the king's assembly. And Gopal Campu Jiva Goswami explains that Chanura said, wait a minute, don't try to play games with us. We heard about you, Baba. You weren't babies when you killed Putana. You weren't boys when you lifted Govardhan Hill. And you weren't a young youth, a Kishore, when you killed that elephant who was as powerful as thousands of elephants. Because you are so strong, the king is going to get so much pleasure in seeing us fight with you. And your elder brother, we also heard about him. He fought with Pralambasur and others. And then Krishna kind of looked down on the ground, scratched the ground, and he said, in a very humble way, he said, that wasn't really because of me. They died because they showed some hatred and sinful conduct towards small children. And you talk about Indra and lifting of Govardhan Hill, but Indra, he was humiliated so that the sacrificial festival could take place. And Giriraj, he was so happy with the offerings, he just floated in the air. It wasn't anything to do with me. We're just cowherd boys. He says, and if you talk about this Dhenukasura, he was just an old bull who had so many bugs all over his body. And Krishna, Jiva Goswami says, Krishna told him, His skin was torn, trying to throw off various people who were riding him, and therefore we just barely touched him. And he fell down and died. And he said, don't blame me for killing the elephant. When the elephant first came, I was terrified. I ran away in fear. And then the elephant went to try to attack me, and it drove its tusks in the earth, and it couldn't get them out of the earth. And so the elephant was pulling this way and that, and then the tusks broke, and the elephant died. It wasn't me. I wasn't the cause of the death. I said in the Mahut, he died by being crushed under his feet. Don't think otherwise. That's a real fact. And then Chanura said, you can't fool us. You're trying to hide your sinful acts by acting like you're humble. The king is not happy with all these things. And he sent to you persons like myself and my good friend Mushtika in order to curb your arrogance. And Krishna again very humbly said that we were able to kill all these persons. It's most astonishing. It's just good luck for us. And moreover, you're just embarrassing us. You're praising us in so many ways. But anyway, it's okay. We'll serve Kamsa. We'll give him the position of a king. And by saying this, they're indicating we'll give him the destination of Indra. In other words, we're going to kill him. And then maybe he'll go to the heavenly planets after he's killed. But Krishna said, we're not so comfortable because we don't know about wrestling and fighting and all these things. Chanura said, hey, don't try to hide the truth. We know about you. You're very, very expert. And so then the boys said, okay, whatever you want. We're ready to serve the king. And so then they took those tusks from the elephant Kuvaliyapita and they struck them in the ground very deeply. Jiva Goswami says, as if they were driving a stake in the heart of Kamsa. At that time, the Garga Samhita describes in the 5th canto that the ladies of Mathura, they became filled with compassion. Sanukampa. Sanukampa is tada prahur. They spoke prahu in a way because they were full of compassion, seeing the beauty of Krishna and Balaram. And these ladies then, they spoke, Aho adharma sumahat sabhayam jatapuro rajani vartamane kva vajatulyanga brito himalo kva pushvatulyo bhattarama Krishno. They said, wait a minute, this is very, very bad. How is this? Aho! They're exclaiming, Aho adharma! This is very, very irreligious. Sumahat sabhayam. And this great assembly, how is this going on? Going on in the presence of the king. These two boys, who the ladies describe, they're like pushpatulyo. Very delicate flowers. And how are they going to fight with kvabraja tulyanga bito himalo? These wrestlers whose bodies are like thunderbolts. It's bad. Now, what is an indirect indication we get here? There is some controversy sometimes amongst the Western devotees who are coming to Vedic culture, and they think, ladies are supposed to shut up, cover their head, stand in the back, and they don't. But here, the ladies in Mathura are speaking up and they're chastising the members of the assembly. Sumahat sabhayam. This is supposed to be an assembly of great personalities. How is it they're chastising the king indirectly? How they can do that? Because these are cultured ladies, and because in Vedic culture, those ladies are given respect. We know from Narada Pancharatra and from Mahabharata that the mother is given more respect than the father. And we see this. Krishna is not a brahmachari, he's a mamachari. Krishna goes to his mother first before his father. So those ladies go on to speak. Aho abhyagyam hi Parokasam na yudhita yordarshanam ajajatam ahoti danyam bhatta bhuri bhagyam vanokasam rasa rasena jatam. Aho yabhagyam. This is very, very inauspicious. That the residents of Mathura, they have to see this kind of fight. And those ladies, these are actually very high-class cultured ladies. Again, there's some indication they know about the gopis of Vrindavan. Why? Because here they address those ladies, ahoti danyam bhatta bhuri bhagyam. Those gopis of Vrindavan, they're bhuri bhagyam. They have great, great fortune. They're addressing those ladies as vanakasam, the ladies of the forest, because rasa rasena jatam, they can taste that ras lila with Krishna. This is a real fortune. What is this? They were supposed to watch this fight between these two very gentle boys whose bodies are just like soft flowers with these terrible, terrible warriors. This is not good. Ahostite rajani dushta richitte nakopi vaktum kshama eva sakya tasmadina punya balena chitto twaram hridevai jayatam arinsvan. And they dare. All the men here, they were being very quiet. They're looking over at Kamsa out of the corners of their eyes. If I say something, he's going to chastise. But these ladies, they chastise Kamsa. And what do they say? Aho stite rajani dushta chitte. Who is this king? He's a dushta chitte. He's a wicked-hearted person. And he's here and no one's saying anything? Nobody's speaking up or saying anything at all? Kopi vaktum. Vaktum means to speak. Nobody's able to do this. And those ladies, and they pray that these boys, by the power of their pious deeds, they'll defeat these wrestlers. And so, at that time, Gopal Campu describes that a terrible fight developed between Chanura and Mustika and Krishna and Balaram. The Gopal Campu, Jiva Goswami describes that Balaram, whose fist punched Pralamba, he was matched with Mustika. And Mustika means someone who has a powerful fist. Mushtik means a fist. So that guy who lives with his fist, that's Mustika. And Balaram, he was matched up with Mustika, and Krishna was matched up with Chanura. And they began to display all the different wonderful arts of wrestling. And when those two big wrestlers, they tried to hit Krishna and Balaram, they missed them. And Jiva Goswami says that at first, they couldn't recognize, they thought, oh, these two really, they're not very strong. But little by little, they begin to understand. These boys are very strong, but they don't know how to fight. They don't know how to wrestle. Why did Kamsa do this? Why did he match us up with someone who doesn't know how to fight? And then a little bit later, they say, oh, actually these two really are very expert. And Kamsa, who's just frightened, he's done something very stupid to match us up with them. We're not equal to these boys. And then they began to realize, and then they started to criticize to criticize Kamsa. And Jiva Goswami says that they're thinking just like a hunter is afraid of a lion, and so the hunter's doing hunting with his dog, right? And so he's hiding in the forest, and the lion comes, and the hunter's, what am I going to do? So he takes the dog and throws the dog to the lion. He said, this is what Kamsa's done with us. We're just like his dog, and Kamsa's just thrown us to these terrible wrestlers. And so then the Hari Vamsa Purana describes Nigatavanato bhutva ranga madhye vavalgutu. The ranga madhye, in the middle of that arena, that wrestling arena, Krishna and Balaram began to shout like thunder and began to leap around. And then Krishna Stoshala Mudyam Ya. Krishna grabbed Toshala, who was huge. Giri Shringopamambali. He was huge like a great mountain. Whirled him around 100 times. Krishna kicked him. And then blood started coming out of the mouth of that man. Meanwhile, Balaram was having a good time. And he was fighting for a while. This is really good. And then suddenly Balaram punched Mustika on the head. And the Hari Vamsa Purana says at that time Mustika's head cracked open and his brains came out on the ground. We have a friend in America, a nice devotee, who used to tell us, I don't like hearing all this gopi stuff. I like hearing about the fighting. And I like hearing the blood. And he would really love this very much. That's Gita Nagari Prabhu, if you happen to know Gita Nagari. He would love this description. So Mustika's head cracked open, his brains came out on the ground. And the Hari Vamsa Purana says that his eyes also came out of his body, and they made a terrible sound. I can imagine the sound when the eyes are coming out of the body. So if perhaps Gita Nagari Prabhu is listening, that was for you, my friend. The Garga Samhita goes on to describe very interesting detail. Grihitva toshalam Krishno madhyata samvidharya cha prakshipat Kamsa maschagre vitapam sinduro yata. This is another one for you, Gita Nagari Prabhu. Okay? That Krishna grabbed Toshala and he ripped him into two pieces at the waist. And then it said here, Madhyata Samvidharya, he ripped him into two. And then what did he do? Prakshipat. Prakshipat means to throw. Prakshipat Kamsa maschagre. He took those two pieces of the body of this powerful fighter, Toshala, and he threw the pieces into Kamsa's box where Kamsa's sitting and watching everything. It must have been a little bit of a surprise for Kamsa. And then the Garga Samhita goes on to say, Ete nipatita range sadyo vai nidanam gataha tesham jyotimsi vaikunte vivushu pashyatam satam. That while all the satta means the saintly persons, the saintly people of Mathura, while they were watching, an amazing thing happened. That those wrestlers who ete nipatita, nipita means to fall, who'd fallen down in that ranga, that wrestling arena, at that time, jotim si vaikunte vivushu, they entered into Vaikuntha. The souls, they saw the effulgent souls of these wrestlers go to Vaikuntha. Meanwhile, there's some other wrestlers who are watching all this, and they said, I think it's time for us to go. And they got really frightened, and they started running away. And then the Garga Samhita says a very interesting thing. Sri Dharmadin Vayasyams cha Gopan Akrishyamadava Tai Sardam Yudam Are Be Sarvesham Pashyatam Satam. That then Krishna, he said, this was hardly even any exercise. These wrestlers are just puny guys. He said, I wanted a good fight and I didn't get it. And he said, hey, Sridham, come here. Let's go. And then he called for Sridham and the other cowherd boys. And then Krishna began to fight with them. Kirita Kundala Daro Rama Krishna Sahabako Viharanto Viksharange Vishnusmu Puravasina. And then Krishna and Balaram, they were wearing nice crowns and earrings, things that they'd stolen from that washerman, which actually belonged to Kamsa. They began to wrestle with those boys. So the Hari Vamsa Purana describes the reaction that everyone had seeing what was going on. And we'll continue with that discussion when we come back again on Sunday. And so I'd like to invite the devotees now. If anybody has any reflections, I'd like to know, what are you walking away with from today? If Gita Nagari Prabhu is watching this, I hope you appreciate. Okay, anybody have any comments? Nothing online? Anapayani, do you have any thoughts you want to share? Come here. You like the brains part?
No, sorry. It was remarkable for me that ladies from Mathura, they weren't afraid of Kamsa, and they openly told us what's going on. We shouldn't be like this. Kamsa is a rascal and things. It was really remarkable for me. They had feelings towards Krishna, and we, as my Guru Maharaj often said, that where is love, there is no place for fear, and it's interesting. And also, it was interesting to hear how Krishna, he was kind of humble, and he was speaking that, oh, it's not actually me, it was special about Govardhan, that he was so pleased and he just did whatever he did. Yeah, flew up in the air. Thank you.
It's an interesting and important point that we may ask a question, why are these ladies speaking up now when the residents of Mathura didn't speak up before, when Kamsa did so many terrible things, when he killed the first 6 children of Devaki? Why didn't they speak up? Why didn't they say something? Hey, Kamsa, this is wrong. They didn't dare. So a couple points from this. One is that Akrura and the residents of Mathura didn't speak up because they didn't have the strength. And as it's said, we should act according to our field of influence. And therefore, in the first canto of the Bhagavatam, when Krishna instructs Lord Brahma to create the universe, Srila Prabhupada writes in a purport there that along with that instruction came the power to do it. So the Vaishnavas, they don't push themselves forward as self-appointed reformers of others or situations unless Krishna tells them, as Krishna did with Arjuna. And so when that order comes, like Lord Brahma got the order from Krishna, then along with that comes the power, the strength to do that. But the residents of Mathura, they didn't speak up before then. The residents of Vrindavan, they didn't try to concoct some conspiracy theory or something, but they just took shelter of Krishna. But here, these ladies now, they're speaking up and they're chastising Kamsa, something which all these big, powerful warriors of the Yadu dynasty didn't do in Mathura previously. Why? They couldn't control themselves. They had love for Krishna, and it just exploded. They couldn't help. They had to speak up. So Natalia has made some comment, thank you very much. This katha illustrates many differences between what it seems and what it really is. And real things can be seen only from the perspective of Krishna and relations with him. Madhupati Prabhu has commented that this double talk, this double speak was very interesting. It highlights that you cannot translate from Sanskrit without knowing the background and the philosophy. Yes, it requires some expertise, something we don't have. But also we can comment that these things are brought out in the commentaries. Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur will say that it's, as he did in some of the comments we were reading, and Jiva Goswami, that one thing was being said but another thing was being meant. And this is the wonderful quality of these Vedic literatures. They require a person to explain them. They require someone who's imbibed these things in the heart. And we can even read from the commentaries. But it's described, Bhaktya Bhagavatam Grayam na Buddhaya na Chatikaya. That to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhaktya Bhagavatam, it requires bhakti. Na Buddhaya, not by your intelligence. Na Chatikaya, not even by reading the commentaries. You can't understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Someone might think, oh, I don't need to have a guru, I'll just read the commentaries of Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur and I'll understand everything. But you won't understand anything. We have to approach a person, and by service of that person, Shushu Shadadhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi, will get that Kata Ruchi, and by having Kata Ruchi, we'll begin to understand. So we'll go ahead and stop there. Thank you all very much for taking part in this discussion today. This is the best part of our day, personally. We get to have a chance to hear some Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the need of the day. that now there's so many difficult situations going on in the world today. Devotees need to take shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam, both for themselves and for the situation in the world. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Vancha Kalpataru